And what I sort of wanted to go over with y'all is to get your feedback as far as the CHOA information. And then Jessica is going to go over the policy as far as what to do when a baby, exclusively breastfeeding mom has her baby in the NICU. So we're going to go over that policy too later. Okay, so this is the objectives today is what we're going to be going over, that you'll be able to describe the benefits of healthy habits assessment in the goal sheet. You'll be able to describe the process of using both the healthy habits assessment and goal sheet in the clinic. And you'll be able to define the procedure for certifying the breastfeeding infant that is in the hospital. Okay, can I have somebody from Fayette read the mission statement, please?
The mission of the WIC program is to safeguard the health of low-income women, infants, and children up to age 5 who are at nutrition risk by providing nutritious foods to supplement diets, information on healthy eating, and referrals to health care.
Thank you, Dahlia. And then read our public health mission.
Inform, prevent, protect.
Okay. So I hope every day we are reflecting on what our mission is. And even through good days, everybody is on the same mission. And when you're having a bad day in clinic, if you keep in mind what your mission is for that day, it will help you get through your clinic day. And I know yesterday I was in Carrollton, and I'm sure they were just thinking about, let's get through this day. What is our mission? It was very crowded, and they just had a lot of crying babies that day. But I was proud of them. They got through it. So kudos to you, Carrollton. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about what we're doing, or what we did do with the pilot program that we did in November with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. So we used the Healthy Habits Assessment form. We had printed that on the back of the child questionnaire, and the family was supposed to fill out the front of the questionnaire and then the back of the questionnaire. And if it related to a child that had a high BMI that made them at risk, I hope that some of y'all were able to use the goal sheet with them. You didn't necessarily have to use it just with that particular group. You could have used it with any of the children. But this is what I sort of want to get feedback from y'all, is how all this went and if you felt it was beneficial, if there was anything you could do different in the clinic when you're using these tools. So let's move on to the questions. Okay, so what are your thoughts on the usefulness of the Healthy Habits Assessment? And let me go to Coweta. What were your thoughts as far as, was it useful? Was it easy to use?
Hey, Gwenna, we had some mixed reviews here in Coweta.
Okay.
From the clerks and from the CPA standpoint, from the participants. Some people thought it was a lot more paperwork, but, they do have to fill out a lot of paperwork in general. Some of the staff really liked it because they thought it made some goal setting easier, especially with the goal sheet. And so, and then, like I said, some of the participants liked it, and some of them thought it was a little bit more of extra paperwork. So we did have some mixed reviews here.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have anything in addition to add to that? Anybody?
Hey, Gwenna, I have a comment.
Sure.
I really like the Healthy Habits Assessment from a nutritionist standpoint. The food sheets in general, I find with a lot of my clients are just wrong anyway. And I know that they're necessary, that we have to do, but this one I think kind of I think guides the conversation a little bit better than just figuring out how many cups of milk or how many times a day for vegetables, how many, so I think just as far as guiding the goal setting, I really do like the healthy habits assessment.
Okay, great. Lindsay, what food sheets, what are you referring to? The questionnaire?
Like the general nutrition questionnaire that we have to use.
Oh,
I know
okay.
that we have
Yeah.
to use it. But as far as differences between that questionnaire and this healthy habits form, I mean, half the time I'm just correcting that nutrition questionnaire anyway. So I think this one does a better job of kind of, guiding them in a general direction of where their goal setting is going to happen.
Right. Okay. Very good. Okay, well, let's move on. So I want to hear from Griffin. Do you think it's beneficial for the CPA to continue using it? And is it beneficial for the participant? Ryan and Tricia.
I definitely think so. We have found here in Griffin that they'll mark on like the food questionnaire, like they'll be eating vegetables on some days, and then on the back of it, on the healthy habits, they'll say that they're giving their child vegetables, 2 to 3 servings of vegetables per day. So then it kind of makes you want to ask even more questions. So we like it. But it is a lot of paperwork, though.
Right. And, moving forward, the intention, I think, eventually is that we're just using the questionnaire for children. But as of right now, we can't do that. We have to use it in addition to the questionnaire. But, okay. Fayette, what changes, if any, would you make in the actual use of the form?
I don't know. I mean, it felt like some people, when they picked what they would work on, it was only because they had those limited options. It didn't necessarily indicate that that was something they previously thought would be a good goal. So maybe there should be something about it that's a little more open-ended so that they don't pick something arbitrary, like so that they can put down something that is connected to something they already want to do. But overall, I think it's great. I found it very helpful, so I only say that because the question is what changes, if any.
Okay, right. Anybody else have anything in addition to say what Dahlia just brought up? Anybody in Henry?
I mean, I agree. They should have an other check mark because they have an other on the goal sheet. So, and I don't remember the 4 little things at the bottom here, but I don't think one of them is other. I think it's like juice, water, activity, and something else.
Okay, did y'all hear Carly? Well, don't answer back.
Say it louder.
Yeah, say it louder, Carly,
Okay,
just
so-
so that everybody hears you.
So I was saying I would agree with Dahlia because on the goal sheet it has a box for other. So I feel like, and I can't remember on the bottom of the Healthy Habits Assessment if it says other, but I don't think it does. So it would be helpful to have, do you want to work on juice or water activity, whatever the other one is, and then something else and fill it in the blank. So.
Okay. So, thanks. Thanks for your input, Carly. I guess I'm sort of putting it out there. Should we continue to use it, print it on back of the child certification? And I'm just letting y'all know that's what we're going to continue to do for now until we hear further from the state as far as, redoing the whole questionnaire and incorporating those questions or just using that healthy habits assessment only for that age group. But I'm going to see, I'll talk with Susan today and see if we can get some more of the healthy habits assessment printed on to the back of the child certification. Are you using the goal sheet with the participant? And if you're not, why? Carrollton, were y'all using the goal sheet with participant?
I have used it with some of the participants, but I don't use it every time, which I probably should.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Were y'all using the goal sheet? LaShonda?
No, I've actually forgotten, to be honest, because I've had it and I've misplaced it. So I need another one. Do we have another way to get that?
Yes, and I can send, I'll send out the
Okay, great.
electronic forms. And actually, I think your managers have it too, so you can print some out. But I'll send it out to everybody today. That's no problem.
Okay,
But
awesome. Thank you.
I would encourage y'all to use the goal sheet, so because it really helps you. It helps you develop a SMART goal with them. So I would encourage you to use the goal sheet.
Okay.
Anybody have anything else to add to what we've been discussing? Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's feedback. I'm actually pretty excited about this, and I think this is a great way for the state to move forward, especially to help with our obesity issue that we have here in Georgia. So starting January 1st, we're going to use the Healthy Habits Assessment, and it'll be used with the child questionnaire for the 2-year-old and older. The goal sheet recommended to use if the BMI puts the child at risk. And use of the BMI chart is recommended to use as an additional tool. So we really didn't talk much about the BMI chart, but I've received a lot of feedback that everybody likes to use that as a tool, and it's a great visual. Additional handouts, the healthy choices and the bring healthy habits home are optional, and I will be sending those out too. So those will be an option for you to use with a participant. It's just another tool that you can use with them. So do we have any further questions? Okay. All right, well, we're going to move on to Jessica. Jessica, I'm going to sort of let you take over.
Okay. Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm going to go over with you guys the process that we've developed for certifying breastfeeding infants that are still in the hospital. We do have a policy for that, and we can definitely send the actual policy out to you, but today we're going to go over what we have decided we're going to do everywhere, because I noticed when I was going around to different clinics that it was kind of being done differently in different places. So this is going to be the way that we're going to do the procedure for when mom has her baby early and she is breastfeeding, but the baby has not come home yet. So, Gwenna, if you'll move to the next slide. Okay, so as everybody probably knows, under most circumstances, it is required to be present in the clinic when someone comes for a certification. We call that physical presence, and it is a requirement. Without the person being in the clinic, we normally have to have some kind of documentation for why the person cannot come into the clinic. Most often it's an infant, but can be a special needs child in some occasions. But everybody's probably had a scenario where you have to get the documentation for why the person can't come in. However, if a mom is exclusively breastfeeding and her baby is still in the hospital, we can certify both mom and baby, even though the baby has not been discharged. And this is going to be the only exception to not necessarily requiring some sort of statement for physical presence. Not that we're not doing those other scenarios, but this is the only time that we're going to make an exception and certify someone when they're still in the hospital. Okay, Gwenna? Okay, and some of the requirements for that would be mom must be exclusively breastfeeding. And we're going to define that as being not just moms that aren't giving any formula, but that they're not getting formula from WIC, which obviously they're not because the baby's still in the hospital. So even if mom tells you that she is, that the baby is getting some formula, as long as the baby is still in the hospital and we're not issuing formula, we can consider them to be exclusively breastfeeding. So that, in most circumstances, ideally it should be that mom is only breastfeeding, but if mom does say that baby's getting some formula, of course we're not going to be the ones giving it, so we can still include them as being exclusively breastfeeding. Mom must receive the food package W41 or equivalent. And by equivalent, I mean things like the lactose intolerant package, the soy milk package, the same package that we would give to anyone else that's exclusively breastfeeding if they have special requirements. Of course, infant must still be in the hospital. Infant must receive the food package 290. That's the only option that they can receive. And of course, hopefully everybody knows formula cannot be issued to an infant that's still in the hospital. So even if mom says that the baby's getting supplemental formula, we cannot issue that until baby's actually home. So those are what we're looking for to do this particular scenario. Okay? Okay, and this is the process for what we've come up with. So mom calls.
Jessica.
Yes. Yes.
Is that your clinic that's being really loud, or?
It's loud, yeah, because we already have people here.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right.
Yeah.
Continue.
Sorry. Okay. Mom calls to make her mom and baby appointment, or she comes in and makes it. They will be asked to bring some sort of documentation. We prefer that they bring the MDF-2, the one where you just put the measurements on it, but we can accept it written on a prescription pad or a doctor or hospital letterhead. But it still needs to be signed and all of that if it's not on our form that we have. So they're going to be asked to bring that information. However, if mom does not bring in the documentation, we will still certify mom and baby, but they can only receive 30 days worth if they don't bring the documentation. If mom does have the documentation, mom and baby will be brought back in 60 days for NHRN. And for that, we need to use our discretion. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, about exactly what we mean by that. A lot of it has to do with like when baby's going to come home and that type of thing. So it's not like automatically everybody's going to get 60 days. Then we're going to talk about that. And then if baby is high risk and still not going to be able to come into clinic, then the measurements, again, ideally on the MDF-2 should be brought at the time of the NHRN visit, if they're still not going to be able to come in for their visit. Okay? And these are some scenarios that may happen with this policy. One of those is, what if mom stops breastfeeding before baby is discharged? And in that case, baby's still going to get the 290, but you can update the mom's feeding type and food package to reflect her new status. So at the certification, we're going to put mom as EBF, but if later she stops breastfeeding, we can do a food package change, but we still can't issue baby any formula until baby actually comes home. But I just want to make sure that everybody knows at the certification it must be E for exclusively breastfeeding. But later, if she does stop, you can't update the feeding type to make it match what she's currently doing. But baby still would not be getting any formula. Okay, next scenario. Okay, so this is one of those things I mentioned earlier. What if baby is discharged before 60 days? And that is going to be up to the CPA and to talk to the mom and figure that out. If a mom thinks the baby may be discharged before 60 days, the CPA needs to use their discretion on doing the certification, because they also need to explain to mom very carefully the process of doing a food package change. So if mom comes in and gets certified in this process and she, gets her 60 days and she and baby are scheduled to come back for NHRN, but then baby gets discharged like in a month or less than a month, and she's already used all her vouchers, then she's not going to be able to get any formula for the baby. So you just need to use your discretion and decide 60 days for those that have all their documentation may not be a one-size-fits-all. You would need to talk to mom and figure out exactly when she thinks baby's going to come home, because we don't want to have a lot of situations where we can't give any formula to the baby because mom's used all of her vouchers. So we just need to keep that in mind. Okay? Okay, so what would happen if you had one of those really, really early babies that stay in the hospital for a really long time, and they're still not discharged and needs a mid-cert? I've only known this happening on very rare occasions, but it has happened before. So if that happens, then at that point the mother's going to be required to bring in the documentation that we normally require in this scenario for physical presence, because this policy is only going to cover the newborn. It's only covering mom when she first has the baby. It's not going to apply if the baby's still in the hospital and needs a mid-cert. If that does happen, she's going to have to do like everybody else and bring in the documentation stating why the infant cannot come. Okay? Now, a word or two about dyads, about keeping mom and baby together, and making sure the feeding types, excuse me, match. When the baby is discharged, mom needs to come in, and both food packages need to be reevaluated. If mom continues breastfeeding exclusively, then no changes would need to be made. You would just keep on with your food packages, except for once baby comes home, you would need to change them from a 290 to the E00 because the baby's no longer in the hospital. But you would never have to change mom. But if mom comes in and says, that she's maybe not breastfeeding, or maybe the baby's getting supplemental formula, then you need to discuss with mom, like we always do, about how much breastfeeding she's doing and try to, get the best match for what she's currently doing. Because the feeding types always need to match. So that's the E for exclusive, M for mostly, and so on. All of those have to match. So if there's ever a change or anything like that, it's going to need to always match on mom and baby. And this really applies to everybody, but particularly in this scenario, because once baby comes home, things will probably change. And so some changes will probably have to be made, and they need to be made on both mom and baby. So just make sure that mom and baby always match. Okay? Does anybody have any questions before I go on? Because we're going to start doing case studies.
Hey, Jessica.
Yes?
I just want to put my 2 cents in for just a second, because I just want to make sure that, because I have to do my training with the clerks next week, that the CPAs are clear on 2 things. For one, I read it and I understand it, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows if they don't have the MDF, they are allowed to the mom is allowed to self-declare her measurements at that initial appointment. Because I have, like, the same thing I keep hearing in clinics where they say, oh, she doesn't have the MDF at the initial cert. So they are, if they don't have that MDF, yes, we want them to have it, and we're going to try to get the call center to include that when they're making the appointment, for the mom to bring it in. But if she doesn't have it, she is allowed to self-declare those measurements at the initial appointment. And the other thing, too, that if she does decide to go, you want to be real clear when you're talking to your moms that could potentially be going to a non-breastfeeding package. Basically, if you tell her if she uses the fish and the whole grain voucher, she's out of luck. But I want to make sure that we're not telling them oh, if you use any of your vouchers, you're not going to be able to. But if we can just direct our moms about the fish and the whole grain, which is on the exclusive package, if she uses those two, she definitely won't be able to make a switch. But if she uses one or two of the others, she will be able to do a switch within that month of issuance. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Casey. Those are very valid points, and that's something everybody does need to keep in mind.
Hey, Jessica.
Yes.
Hey, can I say something too, real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
If the mom comes in now to make those food package changes, remember she needs to be told these moms are all going to have the Symphony pumps. She's got to bring that pump back. Please, please, y'all tell them if they are going to make food package changes, anything other than exclusive or mostly breastfeed, or they need to bring that pump back. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes, and that's another valid point. And we should always definitely be doing that anyway when someone's got a pump and does food package changes. But yes,
Please.
definitely in this scenario, because they're going to have the really expensive pumps.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Jessica,
Yes.
Carrollton, here in Carrollton again, we just wanted to point out too, when we were correcting dyads, we noticed a lot of times when mom changes her food package and goes from exclusively breastfeeding to mostly or some or none, her priority has to be changed, because she's a 1 when she's exclusively breastfeeding, but if she goes to non-breastfeeding, she's not a 1 anymore, but the priority won't change. You have to actually go in and change it.
Yes, that's another good point too. Is that should be done ideally on all breastfeeding food package changes as well. But it's going to really matter in this particular scenario. And yes, moms are never going to really be a 1 unless they're breastfeeding. Most of the time they're going to be a 6 unless they're a teen mom, and then they would be a 3. So those would be your 2 options there. Very good point. Okay, so we're going to start with the case studies. And for the first one, we're going to go with Region A. So Region A, this is your case study. So take a minute and read it for me, and then we'll talk about it. So somebody from Region A, tell me what you think. Should Mom and Baby be certified?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. And if so, what food packages would you use?
The mom would get the W41 or equivalent, and the baby would get the 290.
Okay. And then when would you bring Mom and Baby back?
I would bring her back within 30 days, considering the baby should be home within a month.
All right, very good. That's exactly right. What were the key things from that scenario was that she did bring the MDF for 1, because like Casey was saying, we are going to ask them to bring it. But she did tell us that she thinks the baby's coming home within the next month. So this is one of those cases where we want to talk with Mom and find out when baby's coming home, because if they're coming home within the next month, we don't want to go ahead and give them more than that. And that was exactly right. Okay, so moving on to the case study number 2. We're going to keep it the same order. Region B. Take a moment and read over the case study. So somebody from Region B, should Mom and Baby be certified?
Yes, the Mom and Baby should be certified.
Okay. So what food packages are you going to use?
I would do the W41 and the 290.
Okay. And then when would you bring Mom and Baby back?
In 30 days, since she doesn't have any documentation.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Because she didn't have any documentation, like Casey said, we're going to still see her. We're going to take the self-reported measurements. But because she didn't actually bring the measurements with her, we're just going to give her 30 days. Even though the baby will technically be in the hospital longer than that, but we're going to just do it on a 30-day basis since she didn't have any of the documentation. Okay, very good. Moving along to number 3, Region C. This one is for you. So take a moment and read over it, and then I will get somebody to answer for me. Okay, so somebody from Region C, should Mom and Baby be certified?
Yes, Mom and Baby should be certified.
Okay, and what food packages are you going to use?
W41 and 290.
Okay.
I did want to say something.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
You're okay.
The baby is in the hospital, right? Because in the beginning
Yes.
of this... Okay, I was just making
Yeah,
sure.
I didn't specifically state that, but yeah, baby is still in the hospital in all these scenarios.
Okay.
Then when would you bring Mom and Baby back?
60 days.
60 days, right. Very good, because she had the required documentation. It was on hospital letterhead, which I know a lot of our moms that deliver at some of our hospitals that do this quite often. You know, they typically have little form letters that they send out, but they could type up something, you know, that just says so-and-so was born at however many weeks and should not attend WIC appointment. And a lot of times they'll just include the measurements on there. And that's fine too, even though it's not on MDF2. As I said in the beginning, ideally we like it on that because that's our own form and it just makes things easier. But if it's not, it just has to be on the right documentation. Like it really can't be like just a random piece of paper, you know, that they bring in. Like it needs to be a specific type. But the baby is going to be in a little bit longer, so we can issue the 60 days. Okay, so last but not least.
Hey, Jessica, can I just add something to that?
Yes.
And I don't want the CPAs to be confused at all, but the reason why we want it on MDF2 is because we can use that as form of ID for the infant if they're still in the hospital, but we can't use like letterhead as form of ID if I'm correct about that, right, Casey?
That's correct. In August, they came back and said that for the hospitalized babies, we can use the MDF2 as a form of ID, but that's the only already approved form of ID. Like, that's the only exception. And they have to be, NICU, breastfed babies. So the MDF2 helps. And I was going to say, if they're coming in for the initial appointment, I would just go ahead and give them a blank MDF2. You know they're going to be coming back either because they didn't have the documentation to begin with or because they're going to come back for an NHRN, and you're going to want updated measurements on that baby anyway. So at the initial cert, I would just go ahead and, slip a blank one into mom's folder. They can get them online, and most doctors have them. But I think, that mom is going to be going up and she's going to be visiting her baby on the regular. So at any time, she can hand that over to the NICU staff and get it filled out.
Hey, Casey.
Hey, Carol.
Hey, how about if we give the mom, if we keep some, and when we give the mom a pump, we give her one?
Oh, that'd be a good idea.
And
yeah,
then she'd
I think
have
that's really
it.
great.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll start doing that.
Okay.
Okay. And yeah, that's a great idea. And I didn't throw that in there about the proof of ID because I was gearing this more for the CPAs. But if they do bring the MDF too, that's going to make it easier because they're not going to have to be pending if they have no other form of ID for the baby. We can use the MDF too, but like Casey said, we can't use the letter on the letterhead. The CPAs can, but the clerks cannot use that as proof of ID. So that's the main reason that it's preferred. Because it was just going to make things easier from that standpoint. So last but not least, Region D, well actually Henry, if you will look at number 4 for me, please. Okay, so somebody from Henry, if you'll tell me, what do you think? Should mom and baby be certified?
Yes, they would be. Now as far as the food package, it wouldn't be a $2.90. We would probably have to make some phone calls to figure out what the baby is on and see if we can, get a prescription of a Form 1 to kind of see, Well, yeah, but
I would give her a $2.90, and then I would give her the MDF too. We'll take that. That's how.
yeah, if they're not exclusively breastfeeding, you couldn't give them a $2.90, right?
Right. This is kind of a tricky one. And I threw this in here to kind of be tricky like that, so I'm sorry y'all got the tricky one. This mom is actually not breastfeeding, so if they're not breastfeeding, this scenario does not apply to them at all. This is one of those scenarios, that falls under more like the regular physical presence requirement, where they have to have documentation, because this not bringing the baby scenario only applies if they're exclusively breastfeeding, and this mom is not breastfeeding at all. So in this scenario, mom, is going to need to wait until baby gets home before this baby can be certified. Because baby's still in the hospital, and we don't issue formula to a baby that's still in the hospital. So it doesn't matter if she's on a special formula or not. She's going to have to wait until that baby is discharged before we can see them.
Hey, Jessica, mom can be certified, right?
That's kind of a, Gwenna, I'm going to let you answer that, because I know at one point we weren't doing any moms.
Well, if mom
What
was
is
a
our-
prenatal, she continue to get that up to 6 weeks. So yeah, technically she's still certified.
And that's what I've done most recently when I had this scenario. We just issued vouchers to the mom because she can get vouchers up to 6 weeks. Casey, are you still on?
Yes, and I'm itching to say something, but I feel like I'm being annoying.
No, you're fine. I want you to answer this question. Please
Okay.
tell me.
I'm sorry, guys. I know it's not my training. With the prenatals, she is in a good cert for 6 weeks past her due date. So really, if she has the baby early, she's actually good for longer than 6 weeks, because the certification period will expire 6 weeks from whatever she declared as her due date. When she has the baby early, it really kind of is like an assessment on an individual basis. If you think that baby's only going to be in there, even for like a month or 6 weeks or something like that, I probably would just issue vouchers to mom under her certification, under her prenatal certification, because she is still valid. if it's a situation like where you have the baby is born so early, like at 26 weeks, like in that other situation, and mom's not breastfeeding, and you think that baby's going to be in there until they reach their due date, even though mom is still in a valid cert, in those situations, you may want to go ahead and recertify mom as a postpartum non-breastfeeder. But then, of course, she doesn't have a baby, and then that certification would have to be done down the road, and then baby would be done by itself. So it'll kind of depend on the situation. But when you've got dates like these, born at 36 weeks kind of thing, I probably would just print for mama.
Okay.
Yeah, Casey, that was the scenario that I was talking about. Like if baby's born really early, and mom needs vouchers, so that way mom would still be eligible. I've seen that situation before.
And sometimes we've had situations where they're not in the NICU because they're preemie. They actually were born full term, but because of other issues, breathing, heart conditions, other things, they might be in there for an extended amount of time. And that situation, if you feel because she was born at full term and mom is only going to be good for 6 weeks, you may want to go ahead in that situation and recertify mom postpartum as well, because you're only going to be able to give her like a month's worth of vouchers anyway. If it kind of depends on when you think baby's getting out.
Okay, thank you, Casey. I wanted you to answer that because I knew you would know a little bit more about that. But that's what I typically have done, is just if baby was, born like this was a month early and they could just get vouchers, and then, baby's going to probably come home within the next few weeks anyway. So she's just going to have to wait to basically certify herself and the baby. If baby is going to be in there a really, really long time, like the micro preemies, then I would probably go ahead and just certify mom. But like I keep saying, we can't issue formula to any babies in the hospital, so it doesn't matter if they get any formula. We can't be the ones to give it to them. So baby's just going to have to be done when baby comes home. Okay. Any questions about anything that I said or anybody else has mentioned?
Jessica, I just want to make sure, because I know the clerks are going to get confused. She doesn't have to be exclusively breastfeeding. She just has to be a breastfeeder with a hospitalized baby, and she gets classified as an exclusive. Don't turn her away.
Right.
If she's a some or mostly.
That's exactly right. Like I said in the very beginning, exclusively breastfeeding, ideally we want it to mean that is all the baby is receiving, but just like you have those moms sometimes that come in and they say they're exclusively breastfeeding, but then they decide, that they're going to give like 1 can of formula, but they don't want to get it from WIC because they still want to get the most that they can get under their package. So they just say, well, I'll buy the formula out of pocket. It's kind of like that same type scenario, if y'all have ever had that happen. I know I've had that happen to me before. So it's kind of like that same thing. So even if she does say that baby is getting some formula, we're still going to classify her as exclusive because we're not the ones giving the formula to the baby. Okay. Gwenna, did you want to read your quotations here?
Okay, thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome.
So my quotes for today's Tuesday training come from Winston Churchill. Does anyone know who Winston Churchill is? You'll make me very
Yes, we do.
Yeah, you'll make me very happy if you could tell me who Winston Churchill is.
He was the Prime Minister in England during World War II.
Oh, awesome, Jessica. Thank you. Okay, so if you knew anything about World War II and Winston Churchill, he overcame a lot of obstacles and was able to bring the people together to rally and defeat the Germans. So, and they also were fighting the Japanese and I think Italy at the time too. So there was a lot going on for him, but he's very famous for a lot of his quotes, and one of them was, "To improve is to change, but to be perfect is to change often." So as you know, here in District 4 WIC, we are changing often, which is great because we're trying to improve. And that continuous effort, not strength or intelligence, is the key to unlocking our potential. So I thought those were two really good quotes to go with what we're trying to do, is go from good to great, and we're always going to be changing. Okay, well, it looks like our time has ended. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good job.
Thank you.
My favorite quote. Good job.
Bye, everyone.